All right, up next we have lightning talks. So first person I'm going to introduce here is Andy Davidson with NetSumo LoNaP, talking about 4-byte ASNs.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. This isn't a talk on ASN32 in general. You've got something from Greg Hankins later on that covers that, but I want to do a quick lightning talk that talks about an operational issue we found in the routing table last month. There's an order of magnitude more information on this particular issue on the NANOG list, so if this is of interest to you, please go and read that after the talk. And the slides on the screen show some of the guys who helped lab up these scenarios that I'm describing. So a big thank you to these guys who have made this talk probably more useful. I'm trying to reach out to you in this room. If you're a standards author, we've got some suggestions for you. If you write a BGP stack for an educational or specific enterprise application, you need to know what's happened as well so that your BGP stack doesn't have this bug. And if you're an operator, we need to talk to you about what you might see if the BGP stack you're running has got the bug I'm describing. So I'm guessing that's pretty much everyone in the room covered. You'll have seen this before. Jeff has demonstrated this. There's a lot of up and to the right curves on the internet that show good things happening. Well, this is a down and to the right curve, so it must mean something bad's happening, and it's the exhaustion of AS numbers. Basically, as soon as we get to 65535 in the standard, then there are no more ASs to hand out, but the internet's still going to want to grow. So we have the problem of, well, sometimes you just can't fit more things in a space. And the same as it's really difficult to fit 2 whales in a normal car, you can't fit the number 65536 in the gap that we have for that number today. So what do? Well, we get a bigger car, or we get a bigger space to put the number in. So the standard says to drop a magic number into the open message where your ASN number would be today, and we say that the proper ASN, the real ASN, the big one, is elsewhere in the packet. The magic number means go and look elsewhere. Again, the update message needs to be updated, so in addition to the AS path that we know and love today and use all the time for loop prevention and traffic engineering and other uses, we drop the same magic number into the AS path, and that means go and look elsewhere for the real path for this segment. Support for this software is coming. The crucial part of this talk is if you say, well, I don't have any ASM32 customers, I'm not planning to roll it out onto my network right now, you might actually be running an ASM32 aware speaker just by virtue of the fact that you've upgraded. So this talk is still important to you guys who might see problems on your networks that I'm about to describe. So this is a grab of the screenshot on the NANOG wiki showing which versions of which common BGP stack has got ASM4 support. Okay, what's the issue that I actually saw? On the 10th of December last year, an AS in the Ukraine, a large AS number there, 196629, originated a prefix through 2 transit providers. One of them was interesting. One of the updates we received was interesting. The AS path looked right. There was 23456. That's the magic number that means go and look elsewhere for the real path. So it's a 32-bit ASN update. 35320 was one of the upstreams that we saw this through, and then there were some networks on the way to me. But the AS4 path had Confederation AS numbers in it, which is actually illegal according to the 32-bit ASN RFC. We'll look at why that might have happened shortly, but let's have a look at the actual impact. The RFC is pretty clear. If you learn a Confederation ASN in an update message, then that's an illegal AS4 path. The action defined in the RFC is to tear down that BGP session. Now, we manage networks for quite a few people, and there was an interesting event on the afternoon of the 10th of December. Anyone who used OpenBGP anywhere, a couple of people used it on their edge, a couple of people used it as a route reflector, suddenly found that they were somewhat disconnected from the internet, in part or in full. And that's because the sessions with the transit providers that they had, or other parts of the network in the case of a route reflector, were flapping every time they interpreted this prefix that was originated by the ASN32 network. This caused a disconnection of those networks from the internet. Now, the reason that when illegal things in the AS4 path are found, a session teardown was considered a good idea, is basically so that dirty updates can't leak into the default free global BGP table, simply because the session between the end site and their ISP would be the one that was shut down. But this didn't happen in this case, so dirty data leaked into the global BGP table. The response at that time, because the only equipment we were running for people that had ASN32 support was OpenBSD, we wrote to one of our customers wrote to openbsd.misc, and a patch was produced that day or an hour or two later, and on the list, Claudio, the patch author, wrote, the best thing we can do is mark the update ineligible so that it won't propagate further, and that also means that the session can stay up. And I agree. I think that the route should be dropped so that the people that actually care about seeing that prefix will complain and Knox will get involved and fix the issue. I think that dropping it and causing the end site that's trying to break the internet a problem is justice. How did it actually leak? We did some research into what was running on 35320, looking at the MAC address that they were showing on various fabrics that they were connected to, and we saw that they were running Junos, and Junos introduced AS4 support in 91R1. We discovered that if you ran an AS with versions that didn't support ASN32 and did at the same time, then that might cause this AS4 path with confederation numbers inside it to leak, because it's not being removed on the egress router if the egress router doesn't support AS4. So the key operational message here is if you use Junos and confederations, run 91R1 everywhere, or later, or before. Don't mix the two modes. Anyway, we felt pretty good. We got our customers back up, and it was patched. Everyone calmed down. I went to sleep. Woke up a few hours later in a cold sweat. Hang on, we suffered outages because the standard is wrong, and that might mean that every single BGP stack in the world is broken. So we decided to put our minds at rest. Would prove that it wasn't, but it was. So I homed a Cisco 7200 VXR to our network, brought the session up, and the same prefix that was giving us problems with our OpenBSD routers was causing this 7204 to drop its transit session as well. There's the lines from the log. Cisco have opened that case about it so that if you use these routers, and you can track this particular bug, and you'll know when it's safe to use them. More updates. There are IOSXR, Force10 and Junos seem to behave in a similar way. The session isn't torn down. The path is installed, but with a munged AS path. I've put on there my cheeky observation that for once we're saved because the vendors actually ignored the RSCs here. That's not a license to do so every time. Our recommendation, if a patch to the prefix is not already known and you see the AS4 path, then just discard the update and log that an error has occurred. If you do already know the prefix, if it's an update and you learn it via the same neighbour, then treat it as a withdraw and log as well, so that you won't propagate this dirty AS4 path further. And the comment that I want you to take away is that I'm not arguing that the extension is inherently bad, and it would be bad if you went home with the idea that I shouldn't upgrade. I want the message to be, I'm going to follow this issue and upgrade when it's safe. That's what I want you to go away and remember from this talk. Safety will come when the standard is fixed. That's what I've got. I can see a question already.
Hi, Avi Friedman. I wanted to say that I actually agree that I think that it would be better if the update behavior would be if we wouldn't be resetting sessions, if we would mark prefixes as invalid and log them and do other things. But I wanted to say this is actually a much older than decade-old issue. The first big time I was aware of this was at a NANOG, when I think it was the Bay routers that ANS used were properly, someone had read the RFC, and the everyone else routers that everyone else was using hadn't. And somebody, it was not me at the time, I had not yet written a BGP implementation, but someone had done some BGP implementation and injected a prefix with where the packet length, the AS path attribute length went beyond the end of the packet. So Cisco, router, gets the update and, be zeros, and then, when they get to the AS path attribute, they, preform the AS path as a bunch of zeros, and then they start copying, and then they stop, and they don't go, oh, bad. They just say, oh, well, the AS path is foo bar, 56000. And then, the Bay routers got this and said, RFC bad. And so this has always been a problem, is error handling, RFC, what you think, what you don't think. But I would say that there's been some discussion of this even back IETF, and there are people that feel that we need the update notification mechanism to be the way it is. So I think it's a good conversation, and I think the NANOG audience is important. I think the IETF audience may be even more important. But this is an old issue that's happened a number of times, that you get adding BGP vendor redundancy doesn't necessarily increase. You can actually have those kinds of partitions.
And I nearly forgot to mention, actually, a message was forwarded to me that was posted to the IDR list today. Or very, very recently. I don't think it was today, but the message there was that there's broad support for roughly what we're proposing, because this is a special case and we really don't want networks to become partitioned and disconnected from the internet. But I did see a thread earlier where it was offered onto the list that actually BGP actually scales as well as it does, because optional transitive values that a speaker doesn't necessarily know are transited so that the feature can roll out. It's part of the transition path, and why BGP 4 is as old as it was. It is, and we haven't moved to BGP 5, 6, 7, 8. Optional transitive attributes are passed on, but that is the actual flaw of this particular issue.
Well, when Jim finishes, when he hurries up and finishes debugging BGP 4 so that we fully understand all the problems, then we can move to BGP 5.
Okay, and another question. I think we need to wrap it really quickly. It's a lightning talk, but I want to keep talking to people about this, so come and find me. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks.